Hi, hold on because I have you muted. I'm so sorry. Hold on just a moment. Let me unmute you. How are you? I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear us? Oh, no, it's perfect. Sure. No, this is perfect right here.
I'm gonna grab her baby.
She's grabbing the baby.
Great. That's wonderful.
She might be on the boob, so.
Great. That's even better. We're very boob friendly here.
Yeah.
Yay. How are you?
Hi. Nice.
I'm going to go ahead and set this up off to the side on Instagram really quick.
Yeah.
Let me see.
Viviana's online.
I'm sorry?
Oh, we see another participant. I think was we met here today.
Thanks. Bear with me just a moment. How exciting. Okay, hold on. Again, I apologize.
Well, I think 17 pounds now because she was 16 last time. Look at those thighs. She's
Oh,
like,
okay.
you taking my food?
I'm messing with you. I don't want any. You can have it all.
She's like,
Yeah, okay.
So. Okay.
How are you all doing?
We're good.
Good. Well, thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Ah, thank you.
Can you hear us fine? You have a fan on too.
I can hear you great. Yeah, your fans got nothing on my roosters. So, and I mean, we're all in this, you know, like as far as I've got 3 children, but 2 of them live with me now. And of course we're doing, you know, school sporadically, you know, in between life, but I don't know, we're kind of enjoying it. So
Yeah.
So yeah, I've seen you with all of your like beautiful kids education setup and everything like that. So
yeah, like don't use that as the standard. Like it's been
She's
15 years,
yeah.
so like I have plenty of time to like curate like a space. So like you can do it with just your kitchen table and like your phone. Like
yeah. Yep. I always say that.
Like, oh my God, I need a library too. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
That's just because I'm a book, you know, I'm a bibliophile and like there's no book that will not find a home in my house. So yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go ahead and just do some really brief introductions. I'm so sorry. Yep. I didn't realize. Again, this is a little bit new for me. So thanks for being patient.
You're doing it.
Hayden? Is that her name? I'm sorry?
Oh, I said we're doing it. Yeah, we're just making it work.
Yeah. Is it Kaden? Is that her name?
Katie Ann.
Katie Ann. Okay, awesome. Yeah, I think she was waiting and I got her in. So okay. I apologize. I have to be a little more careful about watching that. So thanks again. For those of you who are joining either on Instagram Live or over here on Zoom, my name is Teresa Robertson. I am a doula, a birth photographer. I've been a studio photographer in the past. I've also been a volunteer for a nonprofit organization called Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep for the past 4.5 years. And so we started doing these live conversations really when COVID-19 hit, because it obviously was scaring a lot of people, but I know from my end, it felt like for me, just almost like this throw up of information was happening. And I was like, this is amazing. So I was soaking everything up and felt like I wanted to contribute something positive to the community. And, you know, at that point we were in the beginning throes of everything. So I thought like, I just don't want to keep like cranking out memes every 15 minutes of updated information. I want to make sure that I'm kind of helping in a positive way. And I just kept thinking about community and conversation. Like that's what it comes down to, especially as we're all kind of like starting to be a little more isolated in our homes. So, so that's just kind of how this all got started. And it's been really nice to just, you know, have these really just casual conversations where we can kind of come together as people who are knowledgeable about, you know, the birth community. And I mean, whether you're working in it or you've given birth yourself, you know, or you've been alongside others who have given birth. I mean, I think we just all have, you know, knowledge and emotions around all of that. So having the both of you on is very humbling, because you both have done just, you both have children, 9 between the two of you. And you also have this incredible wealth of, you know, different advocacy work that you've done, and, you know, kind of had your hands in different pots, I know, throughout your life, which is really inspirational. I guess where I would like to start, if you don't mind, is for each of you to introduce yourselves so that you can kind of also hit the highlights that you want people to know about you. And feel free to, you know, just include anything and everything that you want. And the other thing is, after that, I'd kind of like to talk to you about your own birth stories. And then with the work that you've done, like, were you in the midst of all of it before you gave birth, like during the time you were birthing your children? Like, we can talk about that kind of stuff. So I'll let you introduce yourselves.
Okay. All right, well, I'll go first. I'm Jacqueline Ingram. This is Jaya. So she's here with us today. I am a licensed midwife, licensed in California and CPM. I'll be applying for Hawaii licensure when we get it. And I'm also an IPCLC, so do lactation consultations. And started my passion for birth probably like when I was in 3rd grade, when my mom had her last child. She had a midwife, my teacher had a midwife at the time, and I was like, this is cool, and read spiritual midwifery then as an 8-year-old from Ina May Gaskin, and then just knew kind of that would be something I'd end up working with, but it was a hard road, I guess, to figure out how to get there and which way. Did pre-med in college, and actually took my first doula training when I was 17. I was working as a CNA in the hospital.
Awesome.
And then, you know, did different things in my 20s, and then when I turned 30, I was like, okay, this seems like a good time for midwifery to circle back. And at the time I was living in Los Angeles, where there was licensure and there was a lot of options to train with a variety of different providers. So I studied at National Midwifery Institute and had an apprenticeship at a busy birth center with a doctor, a CNM, and some CPMs. So really got to see a lot of different variety of births and diverse population that we served. And then I finished my apprenticeship in Bali in Indonesia, working with Robin Lem, who has a busy birth center as well, but totally different model. So that was really neat to see kind of how international work is the same and different, and really how small things could make a big difference other places. So that really set off my passion towards global maternal health. And once I finished school and sat for NARM, the national licensure test that we do, accreditation test, I should say, then I really focused on that for the next couple of years until I started having children myself. So I've worked in Philippines and in Haiti, Indonesia, and then in Alaska and California, now Hawaii, with midwifery skills and lactation. I have 3-year-old twins. They were born at home. And then Jaya, who's just turned 4 months, I think is right. Time flies. So here we are in this unique period of time. But, you know, I feel like midwives were made for this, and especially being out-of-hospital providers. A couple years ago, I started this class with Robin Lem about birth in the era of climate change. And we really looked at how now there's so many more disasters happening around the world, both man-made and environmental, that, you know, people need to have skills ready to work in all different settings. And so that is a CEU workshop that's available to go to location, and we're going to make it online this year as well. That's one of my goals, is to get more technical and really just doing all these isolation, restriction, interventions that we have to do. It's making us all go online, like this Zoom or different platforms. So I feel like, yeah, just having that experience before, looking at things in a kind of a outside of the box situation has really prepared midwives to be key leaders in maternal child health at this time. And there's some really exciting things happening in birth and birth advocacy, birth work right now, maybe because of that. So it's getting all brought up to speed right now. So yeah, I'm excited to work with Tanya and bring all these new concepts more into the public eye in Hawaii and across the country and also across the world.
Awesome.
All right. Wow. Let's see how I can follow up with that. I'm Tina. I'm the mother of 6, all born with midwives. The last 3 have been home births. So I've had, many birth experiences, but I always knew I wanted to do birth work ever since I was 3. To me, at that point, it looked like becoming an OB-GYN, a doctor, because that's what it looked like. And that's all you knew. You didn't know about midwives. You didn't know that was a thing. So that was my trajectory. I joined the military at 17 as a hospital corpsman. Even before that, similar to Jacqueline, I worked as, a CNA and, in the hospital just to get a gist of like, if this is really what I want to do. So I joined the Navy as a hospital corpsman. I worked at Bethesda Naval Hospital, worked on various different floors, med-surg, labor and delivery. And that's where I saw my first birth, maybe at 18 or so.
That's right. I'm from that area.
Yes. Yeah. So highly trained in that way. So I came to midwifery with skills already. The military paid for me to go to college and undergrad. So like Jacqueline, I'm a pre-med major, biology. Stayed on to get a master's in medical science. And then I went on to medical school. So went to medical school in Philadelphia. At the point, I had just had my second child, and I started med school with a newborn. He was 6 days old.
Oh my God.
Because at the time, I was told that I couldn't defer, and it was my dream, and this is how I was going to do the work. So I went. And I think the turning point for me was being someone who's about to become a doctor and the way I was treated as a mother, as a student and a prospective doctor, and just kind of floored by the lack of training we had in regards to, women, bodies, childbirth, breastfeeding wasn't even spoken of. And it made me question whether this is what I should be doing. And just, while I was in the midst of med school, I had all the time in the world, but I started working at a birth center called Maternal Wellness there in Philly, and where I really just got to look like, oh, there are actually midwives who are still doing home birth. That's not a thing that, was something of the past that our grandmothers did. And I did that work while I was still in med school and made the decision that I needed to leave med school. This wasn't it. And then midwifery found me. There was all these kind of twinklings in my ear. And I was just after I finish having children, maybe, in the future. And then we were here in Hawaii, 2009. I was pregnant with my 3rd child. Before that, we were in Mississippi where midwifery is illegal. So I wanted to have, the option to have an out-of-hospital midwife, but it just wasn't a thing. And people were crossing state lines to do it. And so I came to Hawaii in this kind of in the same situation, trying to find a midwife. I ended up having my daughter at Castle, with midwives. And I was oh, okay. And we pretty much did it by ourselves because there was so many of us in labor at the same time. So that was the first time I was oh, okay, after this, we're totally home birth. And then that's what we did. And by the time I had 4th baby, I found a home birth midwife, and she was like me, a homeschooler, and I just was sold. And she got me into legislative work in regards to midwifery in California, and that was kind of my leap in that way. And she knew my background, and she was you would make a great midwife. And I'm maybe once, my kids are older. And then I had my home birth, and I was sign me up. What do I do? And I enrolled into midwifery school a few months after having my 4th child. I went to Midwives College of Utah and been rolling ever since. Been pretty much parallel, doing advocacy and legislative work along with my midwifery training. I'm in the process now, during the COVID, I'm getting ready to take my NARM exam. So I'm a CPM candidate, but we'll be able to take them from home now. So they're making allocations for that. So I'll be a CPM soon here in Hawaii. And once licensure comes in July, I'll be a licensed midwife. And yeah, so I just lots of advocacy work for me, lots of maternal child health, public policy work. I'm a part of various different boards. You know, we don't need to go into, you know, the names, but like a bunch of work on just this kind of local, state, and national level, being part of consumer groups as well as like trade organizations as well. So I'm happy to be doing the work here in Hawaii, and Jacqueline and I have lots of overlap from like California and the midwives we know. Preceptors and like, you know, just clients, just everything. And we're just like, we heard about each other. Yeah. And we're just like, we need to work together, but with something that was going to be in the future, because we both have small children. My youngest is 2, and then she just had Jaya. But like with COVID-19, like the need was now, and we figured like we need to just go ahead and jump in and like offer our services because community needs it. And here we are.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just goosebumps. Okay, good. I was feeling a little alone in that. And both of you had said stuff that, again, this is not supposed to be all about me, but I am going to take the opportunity to say that I felt the fact that like, it feels so good to have other people talk about how it's like, it's been sprinkled, and like looking back through the years and being in those things were not just happenstance. Those were not just quick fleeting moments in time. Those were leading up to this. And I kind of I kept telling one of my girlfriends who's responsible for me being a doula, I kept saying, I'm not going to do this full time. I'm not going to, you know, like this, I'm not going to commit the way you commit. Like, I just don't think it's my calling. And then all of a sudden some major things lined up. And when this happened, I was like, what do you mean I've done anything else? I've always done that, you know. It's like all of a sudden it was like the time is now, and it just feels right to like just go. I feel almost like something else has taken me, lifted me up, and like forward. And that's what it sounds like with the two of you, just like
we just have to take the leap. You know, and it's scary, but it's like, you know, no, we're ready for this. This is what we've been doing. Like you said, this is what, you know, all those paths have been leading up to. And it's just been real serendipitous, to be honest. And just like all these, you know, all this synchronicity and all the things that are coming together. Like it, like you said, it gives you goosebumps. It like gives us goosebumps with all like just the work that's happening and just all the connections to where we're like, we're exactly where we're supposed to be. This is what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. And I've had a couple of conversations with women who are, you know, currently expecting right now, and, you know, really started to get scared for a while. I know one woman who is, has had 4 children. She's having her 5th, and it's going to be the first home birth. It's not what she was necessarily planning on, even though that's what she kind of had always wanted, but she couldn't quite get her husband on board. And so, you know, just having the conversations with some of these women saying like, I know you're uncomfortable right now. I know you're scared. I know you feel like you are not, you know, in control of the situation, but I also need to let you know there's a lot of women behind the scenes who are ready for you, ready to care for you, who are knowledgeable, ready, you know, just ready to be there for you in whatever capacity you need. You know.
That's a good point too. Tanya and I were just talking about that earlier. And in communication with Sunny, who's the executive director at Healthy Mothers, Healthy Babies.
She's wonderful.
She's amazing.
She's so amazing.
But she was saying that since COVID happening, that there's just been such an increase in rate of people needing supplies or maybe needing that extra support. So if it's not in-kind things, it's like talking about this anxiety in this period of time. And we all know that stress is really hard on pregnancy. The babies can feel it. All that cortisol and all that. So I definitely think there's just getting the message out there that, yeah, we're here for you. Maybe you're not going to have a home birth, but we've got somebody who could do perinatal therapy, or, you know, you could see all as a doula or
postpartum care. Yeah.
Yeah. We both really are big postpartum believers.
Yes. Awesome. I mean, the more, and it took me having like more children of my own, just from my own experience, to realize just how important like postpartum is. Like we talk a lot and we prepare a lot for the birth part of it, and then just not realizing like how much support community you need after the baby is here, you know. And it took me like to baby 6 where I'm like, this is exactly what I needed to look like. This is what I need on deck. You know, this is, you know, how much, you know, love and support I need and people I need in my corner to make this like ideal for me. So, and I can only imagine like being pregnant now or being in the midst of postpartum during COVID and just, you know, with social distancing and just like, you know, all the information that's out, isolation and just people not being able to have that kind of contact. So, you know, we feel it and we know, what people are feeling.
Do you feel, going back to the work that you both did at, you know, even having those seedlings of thoughts at such young ages that, you know, that the birth world was going to be something you were going to be called to be a part of. Do you feel like all of your experiences prior to having children kind of helped shape and mold how you had children? Or do you feel like it wasn't until you actually became pregnant that it all kind of started coming together and molding a full picture of the support you would provide and the resources you would provide other women? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think probably both, because in my case I did school first and then finished and then started working on the children aspect of it. And so yeah, you just start going through pregnancy, even not even up to birth, but you know, I'm thinking like we've read about this, you're seeing how it manifests in different women and people. But yeah, until you experience it, then maybe you just have a different way that you would direct a topic or kind of provide care. And then I know during labor, I just kept thinking of my great-grandmother, who I never met. But she was really young when she had kids. She had 9 kids in a small little cabin, just Aleut, so I'm Native Alaskan and Russian. And I don't think you got a choice in who your partner was back then and all these different things. But I was like, well, if she could do it, I can do it. It's going to be fine. And like, they didn't even have midwives, you know, really. And then it just went from having that whole system to Indian Health Services that I saw growing up. So I was like, there's got to be something in between. So you're not just unassisted or in this like federal medical program. And what's the bridge there? So I really took a lot of like thought about that during labor. And then with the second baby was such a different experience because yes, then I'd already worked with so many moms by then, knew what to expect from my first birth. And it was really a different experience from the twins. Being a long labor to this was really fast and easy. And so, yeah, it was really nice to have like, at the time I had a midwife here who'd been my teacher, Erin Ryan. She's lovely. We've partnered together doing global health work and teaching, training midwives. So she was here. And then we happened to have a house guest from Finland who's a NICU nurse and home birth midwife. So just, yeah, they made food and it was Thanksgiving. We still went on with our Thanksgiving and had like a lovely placenta artwork kind of an activity.
Yes. Yeah.
Had a bunch of nieces here, so it was really nice. And got to just stay home and enjoy all the different kids. And then, yeah, like I think when February hit, I was like, hey, it's time to start doing stuff again, take the baby a little bit farther. So.
Yeah, and for me, like I always knew like my idea of what care looked like, you know, even like as a young person was very clear, and that part of it didn't change. Like the type of nurture and love and care I wanted to give to people was very clear. Just growing up, you know, like just poor and seeing my mother and my aunts and my family and just what care was like on Medicaid or how doctors treated, you know, people who didn't have insurance, that was really resonant with me. How I was treated, like being on Medicaid and going to see the pediatrician, like all those things, you know, were some of the impetus for me to want to become a doctor, to do it better or to, you know, to do birth work. But once I actually had, you know, children and then stepped into like medical school, I was like, whoa, like, and most people in medical school are young. They haven't had children yet. So I was like, these are the people that, you know, pregnant people are going to for guidance and think they're authorities. And most of them have never had, you know, even the women, most of them have never had babies. Most of the doctors haven't had babies yet. They don't start having babies until they're out of their residency and practicing. So, you know, it's a different place to be informed from, and especially when you're taught under that model. So it was me there who had, you know, this idea of what I wanted care to be like. I thought I was going to be this doctor who had a little home birth bag, and I was going to do home visits for people, and it was going to be really intimate even as a doctor, and getting to that point and realize like, oh, this is nothing like that. That's not how we do care. And then on a very intimate and personal level, how it's treated as a mother, and realizing like we have this all wrong, you know. And then the more children I had, you know, it just really informed, I think, clients can resonate with someone who's been through the experience with them. Not saying that you can't be a good birth worker or, you know, midwife, you know, until you're a mother, but it is a different kind of connection to where people know like, oh, you know what this is like when, you know, I'm speaking about this issue. They like to hear your stories, even though it's not about you. They like to hear like, you know, what you did or your experience. And it is just a different connection, like mother to mother, you know, or someone who's birthed, you know, to another person who's going through that process. And it really makes that kind of like relationship and care very intimate, and people like love it because they're, and especially even like, you know, I was still, you know, seeing clients like through my pregnancy. So they see like, you know, they're pregnant and I'm pregnant too. And I have this big belly and I'm tending to them. And they just really loved the magic of that. And it really just resonated, and it made them feel even more secure. Like, okay, you're a mother and you have how many kids and you're pregnant now and you're serving me. Like, this is the best thing ever, you know? And it just brought a different aspect to the way I wanted to practice and the way I wanted to care for people. And especially like how I thought, you know, I wanted to deliver postpartum care as well.
Right. I think that's so, just what has been a focus for me lately, I know in conversations, and I don't think it's like this for everybody, but finding at least throughout, you know, my life and family and friends and people I've met and, you know, been surrounded with, that it always felt like, and it still sometimes always feels like, you've got this extremely medically minded group of birth thinkers. And then you've got this extremely, I mean, just for lack of a better term, like crunchy birth, you know, where they're like, think that they don't have any knowledge or education whatsoever. And it almost has always felt like in neither side shall meet in the middle, when really, when we look at, you know, have these conversations like we're having today, and the more conversations, and that's one of the reasons why like I wanted to do this, is talk about the fact that you don't have to, like, let's talk about where we're all meeting in the middle in our individual bodies and our individual, you know, socio-economical situations and what that can mean for all of us. How much more fluid birth and birth families and birthing people and everything involved in that can actually be, instead of this very, you know, one extreme or the other side. And so I think that's, you know, just again, hearing you both talk about the education that you have and what has come out of that education of your own opinions on what is appropriate and not appropriate, you know, how we treat people as people.
And two, you know, education comes from, you know, various places and forms, right? Like, you know, I think sometimes when people think about education, they're like, oh, like you went to school and like, you know, and that's the only valid, you know, way of learning. And it is a way of learning, but yeah, like there are other ways that we are informed about how we give care, right? Like it's lived experience, it's what we've observed, you know, and it's, you know, things that have been passed down, things that are just innate to you, right? Like that's not to be negated, but like it's this kind of, like you said, meeting in the middle of that, like, you know, taking like the skills and, you know, what we learned from school and training and our apprenticeships, and then melding that with like, you know, just what we know and what we feel and what our experience were, and, you know, all of that, you know, whatever, you know, cultural experiences, you know, that your people and how they birth, you know, come from. And there's a place where, you know, all of those things are valid and all of those things can come into play. And it doesn't, you know, have to be one extreme where this, you know, it's like, we don't listen to anything the medical side said. And then this medical side is just like, oh, that is hogwash, you know, like, you know, whatever that is, you know. And I think Jacqueline and I are both like in that same place, and we're very similar in our ways. Like we can be woo-woo and crunchy. We are crunchy to, you know, a point, but we are all about the skills and the training and, you know,
making it transparent.
And yeah, and like this is what, you know, these are our lines and this is what is appropriate and this is our scope and all of those things, you know. And I think clients like that. They like knowing like, oh, okay, you're open and you're down, but to where we're very clear, like this is what this looks like.
Yes.
These are our parameters. This is when we need to seek like the medical community. This is when it's okay for us just to be woo-woo and do the things. You know what I mean? And I think people like having those parameters to work within, to understand like what their birth is going to look like and what they want it to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I apologize just because my Zoom is telling me I have a couple minutes left, but I think we're good for now. And plus, I also know I need to be mindful of your time. Yeah, it's like just kind of piggybacking off of that. Again, I know just even for me, like the hearing women talk about, I don't know what I want to do. Like, I feel like I just really want to have this unmedicated birth, but I can't quite get, my husband to get on board. He really wants me in a hospital. And, we just don't have that type of relationship where I'm just, I do want his input and I do want us to come to this decision together, and saying like, you can be in a hospital and have an unmedicated birth. Like, you can do that. And just like, oh, well, yeah, I guess you're right. I didn't quite think about that, And then my next thought in my mind being just, how do we get, get people to kind of open up a little bit? How do we show more families that it's okay to, look so many different ways throughout your birth? I feel like somewhere along the lines, we limited what that birth picture looked like so extremely, and it does nothing but hurt everybody across the board. And I don't know, it's interesting.
Well, we are planning to start doing webinars and even maybe like some shorter sessions like this too, about different themes, hoping to do it kind of on the regular so that people can start learning more about midwifery and natural birth and different birth settings and options really too. And I mentioned before, like, this is an exciting time in healthcare where it's heartbreaking, all the different things that are going on, I feel like, in the front line and ICUs, and just the not knowing of this virus has taken over our world. It's another time that like the insurers and the public is seeing like, well, maybe we can do telehealth, maybe we can cover it. Yes. And I think having more access to care, knowing that people have to make these opportunities equal for everybody, really makes it like enticing. Like, why not then choose the low risk option instead of just thinking of this medical way that we've been trained to think for a long time, unless you're in the birth world and this is just our everyday conversation. So I was just telling, Tanya actually came up with this idea with Big Push for Midwives. They just launched today a website, Where's My Midwife? And you can literally pull up anywhere in the country, this country, right? Not world, and show which midwives are there, what is their training, what are the services that they're offering. So I just put that up for us there today.
Awesome.
Big Push is really all about reducing inequalities. It's also Black Maternal Health Week. And so we're all about reducing racial disparities, and that's a big issue everywhere.
And we're seeing it more, like COVID is like, kind of blown the cap off of that, right? Where we're seeing, just the limitations and the gaps and the flaws, like within like the way we deliver, healthcare, right? And then, especially for, Black, Native, Indigenous people, right? Where, we're the ones who, bearing the brunt of that, right? And so now, like, they're all eyes on this, the kind of topic, and then, bringing that down to the level, what does that mean for maternal health care, right? So, like Jacqueline said, it's like, it's kind of like a tale of two cities. It's the best of times and the worst of times, right? But like, we hate that this is how it had to happen, but it's, it's hopeful even to like, okay, now we're having the conversations. Now everybody sees, it's not just this little sector, of, midwives and birth workers, talking about like, this is what it could look like. Now everybody's like, hey, like, what the hell? Like, we can do something different. We can have care outside. Why aren't low risk people like having births in birth centers? Or why can't we have, there's conversations about pop-up birth centers now in the midst of this. So, if we can do it now, like the conversation, in the future and moving forward out of this is like, why can't we do it all the time? Why isn't that an option all the time? If the conversation is about emergency, insurance and, funds and all this, why can't that be something that is done all the time? So, I'm extremely hopeful, you know, and optimistic that like this is the shift. This is literally the paradigm shift that we needed to like start thinking about these things in different ways, especially for communities of color, you know, because something has to give and we can't go back to the way we did things before, you know.
I really hope so. I really hope so, because sometimes I get so ingrained in things, and then, you know, I'll mention something to somebody else and they're like, I don't even know what you're talking about. And I'm like, what do you mean? You're not hearing these conversations being had? Like, what?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's pause. That's fine. Not your fault. You haven't heard anything about it. Do you want to know more? You know, like, and at what capacity, you know, would you like to hear more, so I don't overwhelm you and you never want to hear anything again? But yeah, you know, witnessing the same things, but also, you know, just like I said, like, I hope so. I really, really do hope that this is going to bring significant change in the best way possible. I hope so.
United States across the nation are pushing for. They're using this opportunity to be like, hey, you know, and just across the board,
Make
like all the things. Like, let's make exceptions. Let's push for, you know, like let's full throttle. Let's talk about universal health care. Let's talk about paid family leave. Let's talk about how all the ways that we care for, you know, pregnant people, mothers and children and elders, because we're seeing like what's happening and how they're falling through the cracks. So yeah, like, you know, it's great that like policy workers and like grassroots people are like the ones that people are like, you know, turning to, like, give us, you know, okay, we're listening now, like, because we're in this crisis. And so people want solutions and they're starting to listen to them. And let's hope that, you know, it continues, you know, that the ears are still open and the hearts are still, you know, open, and we're ready to actually, you know, really make some change, you know.
So if somebody, not to put you totally on the spot, but if somebody's listening to this right now and they're like, okay, I don't even want to say it out loud. I just feel so stupid because I still don't even understand what they're talking about. I feel like this is over my head and I don't even know where to start. Do you have any resources that you would, off the top of your head, recommend to people just to start even getting their toe wet into this topic that we're discussing?
Big Push for Midwives. You can literally just type in the Big Push for Midwives, and there's literally like the first page, there's a whole list of just resources for anybody, be it, you know, birthing people, be it midwives or whatever, just policies, resources, information. So I would definitely direct you there. Black Mamas Matter Alliance has, you know, a toolkit and has, you know, all the information you need, especially if you need to be more, you know, well-versed on, you know, what are people talking about when they're talking about, you know, Black maternal health and the disparities. What health disparities are we talking about? How does that apply to, you know, Native and Indigenous people? What's the correlation? Like, you can get all that information there, especially now since it's Black Maternal Health Week. There's so many organizations, you know, who are uplifting the voices of Black organizations that are led by Black women and, you know, birth workers. So I say, you know, definitely go to them. Southern Birth Justice, you know, they're doing the same thing, a Black woman-led organization. There's just so many things. Even if you just type into Google, you know, and type in, you know, community midwives, you know, home birth midwifery, and start there. Birth options. I think just across the nation, there's so many articles out now, you know, talking about the topic, you know, to where you can throw a stone and you can find something. So do your due diligence and just, you know, Google, look up, you know, definitely if you're looking for a midwife, you can go to Where's My Midwife app, and it'll literally span out people there, you know, and you can talk, you know, to advocates and, you know, find who you're looking for. But the resources are out there. Healthy mothers, healthy babies. For
every mother counts.
Here in Hawaii, every mother counts, you know. Absolutely.
Well, I am afraid, I'm so grateful for you. I'm so afraid this is going to cut us short. So again, I might hop back on real quick if it does, but I do want to say really fast, if this cuts us off, I am going to put your information in the links below this. I'll let you know when, and anything I've left out, feel free to type up. I am going to hop over in a little bit, see if anybody's asked any questions on Instagram Live. And if you're on Instagram Live and you're watching us and I don't get to you, again, I'll just type it in the comments. But I really appreciate this conversation. I so do. I'm always just kind of hungry for this type of talk, and appreciate those that have joined and will join in the future to listen. So
really, thank you for having us.
Thank you, Teresa.
Yeah, no problem. Have a beautiful rest of your day.
Thank you.
And I hope to see you soon.
Yes, yes.
All right. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.